Coming up, a first glimpse of a remarkable slice of pre-war television history, rescued from a garden shed. But now, we take a voyage to the Isle of Bute, where we help to piece together the story of a musical dynasty hidden within an old photograph fading away in a family collection.
The photograph is of a violin maker. It's meant to be my grandmother's brother, Jules Chanot. Because my mother was starting to delve into her past just before she died, so I thought I'd try and carry it on and finish it.
With just a few old photographs to go on, we began our research by tracking down his grandmother Emily Mary's birth certificate, which showed that her father was a Frederick William Chanot, violin maker based in London. We sought further clarification in the New Grove Dictionary of Music and Musicians, which listed the Chanots as a French family of violin makers. The author of the dictionary entry, Charles Baer, was able to expand further.
Chanot violins are all over the world. They're very popular. The first Georges Chanot, he was from a violin-making family already, and he was really the second most famous violin maker in Paris in the middle of the 19th century. Violin was the first. And he had a son who he also named Georges, whom he trained until he was about 20, and then he thought it would be a good idea if Georges II came over to England, and went into business in 1857 on his own account.
Georges Chanot II had set up his violin business at 103 Wardour Street in Soho, London, and quickly built upon his family's reputation as leading violin makers.
I would think that he had a beneficial influence on the English violin making of that period by his presence in London. With all these makers in Wardour Street, it must have been quite competitive, and Georges II was certainly one of the leading ones.
So we know Georges Chanot was a leading light in the world of violin making. But did Charles know anything of the man in Peter's photo?
Well, this is the second Georges Chanot in this photograph. It's obviously a well-thumbed photograph, and I should think it was taken about 1880, because you can see he's quite old there. And I'm pretty sure he's posing with an instrument that he owned and that later found its way to the Royal College of Music. And of course, he's got his French Guild cap on in the photograph here that all the well-known master violin makers had. Quite clearly it's the same man as we have in this photograph here. This is of him standing outside his shop. I think they probably are both about 1880, and it's in Wardour Street. And the shop's still there pretty much like that now, but it's not a violin shop anymore, of course. It's nice to see that, because I haven't seen this photograph before. I've got 3 or 4 photographs of the same man. That's how I know who he is.
Peter's photograph is not, as he had assumed, of his grandmother's brother, but his great-great-grandfather, the renowned Georges Chanot II. The revelations didn't stop there.
A few months ago, Griffith Chanot came to see us, and he had a violin which he'd inherited, which had come down through the Chanot family. He was related by descent to Frederick Chanot, the music publisher and earlier violin maker, who in turn was the son of the second Georges.
We set out to track down these surviving Chanot family members, Griffith and his sister Yvonne, to tell them about Peter and his photo, to see if they could add to the story of the Chanot family line.
Our father was George Frederick Chanot. He taught music, violin, piano, etc. in London in the 1920s and 30s.
Yes, and his father was Frederick William, who had shops, and he was the last in the line of the violin makers in Paris.
As we established earlier, Frederick William Chanot was also the father of Peter's grandmother, Emily Mary, so surely we had made a family connection.
Our grandfather, we didn't know him, but we did know of 3 children. There was my father, Auntie Kit, who was a year older than my father, and then Uncle Alf, who was a couple of years younger. And it's not until the programme contacted us that we even knew there was a fourth child who apparently was the eldest child. We somehow, I don't know why, but we never knew her.
Emily Mary, Peter's grandmother, was the missing fourth child, and apparently a link to lost family ties.
I was very surprised, never heard of Peter at all, or even his any of his family. I mean, apparently
his mother.
No, his mother's name's Rosalie, and we didn't even know her. But I came across some old documentation, and one amongst it was a birthday card to my brother, and it was actually from Rosalie, which I found astounding because we'd never even noticed it before.
The descendants of the master violin makers are planning to meet for the first time. A musical dynasty united by a faded photograph and a little help from us.